My name is Lucille. I'm 32 years old, 24 hours. That's all the notice said I had. 24 hours to erase a life, pack up a home, and disappear. The world I had built, the four walls I thought would always be there, were about to come crashing down. The piece of paper in my hand was shaking, but honestly, I was shaking more. It was a formal looking document, but it felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. An eviction notice. The words 24 hours to vacate were printed in a bold, unforgiving font. In that moment, standing under the familiar glow of my kitchen light, the future wasn't just uncertain, it was a black hole. I thought I was losing everything. I thought the story ended there with a closed door and a person left on the outside. But what I gained in the chaos that followed was something they never saw coming, and something I never knew I needed so desperately. Before that piece of paper, life was normal, deceptively so. It was a life built on the comforting predictability of my own small universe. My apartment wasn't a palace, but it was mine. Two rooms on the third floor of a brick building with windows that rattled when the wind blew just right. It was where my mail arrived, where my plants grew toward the afternoon sun, where the scuffs on the floorboards told stories of misplaced furniture and clumsy dancing. I had a job that paid the bills most of the time. I was doing what almost half of all Americans do, living in that delicate balance of paycheck to paycheck, where one bad car repair could tip the scales. But you learn to live with that low grade hum of anxiety. You push it down. You tell yourself you're careful, you're responsible, you have a budget, you believe that the four walls around you are a fortress. My days were a predictable rhythm: wake up, coffee, commute, work, commute, dinner for one. Weekends were for errands and laundry. It was a life of self reliance, something I'd prided myself on for years. I was independent. I didn't need anyone. That's what I told myself anyway. And my family, they were a phone call away, theoretically. In reality, they felt much farther. We weren't estranged, not in the dramatic way you see in movies. It was just a slow drift, a quiet erosion caused by distance and time. A birthday text here, a brief holiday call there. Our conversations just skimmed the surface. How's work? Fine. How are you? Busy, you know? We were also busy building our own lives, our own fortresses. I loved them, of course. I just didn't think I needed them. My fortress was strong enough. It had to be. I had built it myself, brick by solitary brick. The idea that it could all be gone in an instant was a story that happened to other people. It wasn't my story until it was. If I'm being honest with myself, the notice wasn't a total surprise. It was the result of 1,000 tiny cuts. A freelance client who paid late, a car repair that cost double the quote, a medical bill I kept shoving to the back of a drawer. Each one was a small crack in the dam. I'd fallen behind on rent, just 1 month, I told myself. I'll catch up. I sent emails to my landlord, making promises I fully intended to keep. But the world doesn't run on good intentions. The eviction notice was the final answer. Now, I know a 24-hour notice isn't legal in California. For non payment of rent, it's supposed to be a 3-day notice to pay or quit. And even then, there's a whole court process that takes weeks, if not months. But in that moment of pure panic, I didn't know my rights. The notice was designed to intimidate, and it worked. The threat felt immediate and absolute. All I could see was that 24-hour deadline. The questions of legality and fairness didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the ticking clock. Panic is a cold, sharp thing. It started in my chest and spread through my veins. 24 hours. How do you pack a life into 24 hours? I walked through the apartment, my home, and saw it for what it had become. a museum of a life that was already over. That chair from the flea market, the books I meant to read, the half finished painting in the corner. Each object was an anchor, and I was being told to sever every line and drift out into a storm. The financial shock was one thing, but the psychological toll was the real devastation. It wasn't just about the money, it was the raw, burning shame of failure. Who could I tell? Who could I call and say, I failed, I'm being thrown out of my home? Eviction is a profound psychological event. It's not just losing housing, but a loss of self worth that can lead to depression and anxiety. It feels like a scarlet letter that follows you, making it harder to find a new beginning. I stared at my phone, at the names of my friends and family. Each name was a potential life raft, but my pride was a lead weight. Asking for help felt like admitting a defeat I couldn't even comprehend. So I didn't. The clock was ticking, and I was utterly terrifyingly alone. The first hour was lost to paralysis. I just stood in the living room, turning in slow circles. The sheer size of the task was a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. Pack. I had to pack. But where do you even start to dismantle a life? I finally moved in a frenzy, pulling out trash bags and the few boxes I had. The sorting process was a brutal triage of my own history. What was essential? What was sentimental? What was just stuff? This coffee mug from a coworker, trash bag, these clothes I haven't worn in a year, box, this stack of old letters tied with a ribbon. My hand hovered over them. They weighed nothing but felt impossibly heavy. I couldn't throw them away. But where would they go? I didn't have a where anymore. They went into a box, a question mark sealed with packing tape. Every decision was agonizing. This wasn't just physical, it was an emotional excavation. The worn out armchair where I'd spent countless nights reading. Too big. It had to stay. I ran my hand over the fabric one last time, a silent, heartbreaking goodbye. The set of dishes from my grandmother. Too fragile. I wrapped a few plates in a towel and left the rest. It felt like a betrayal. Hours bled together. The sun set, casting long shadows across the chaos. My apartment looked like it had been ransacked. It was a violent, chaotic reversal of building a home. I was tearing it apart. The shame was a constant whisper. What would the neighbors think, seeing me haul garbage bags at midnight? This fear of judgment is a common reaction born from the powerlessness tenants feel. By early morning, my body was screaming. My back ached, my hands were raw, my mind was a fog of exhaustion. I had sorted my life into 3 piles. The keep pile was pitiful, a suitcase of clothes, a box of documents, and the small box of letters. The donate pile was a fantasy. There was no time. It was really the leave behind pile. The third pile was trash. It was staggering how much of a life could be deemed trash in 24 hours. I looked at the mountain of black bags and felt like I was throwing myself away with it. The sun would be up soon. My time was almost up, and I still had nowhere to go. The final hour was a blur, a final sweep of the rooms, now echoing and empty. They looked so much smaller without my life in them. I scrubbed the kitchen counter, a bizarre, pointless act of penance. I wanted to pretend I was leaving with dignity. The landlord was waiting downstairs, a curt man who avoided my eyes. I handed him the keys. The small metal objects felt monumental. They were the last physical connection to this life. As his fingers closed around them, a sense of finality washed over me, so cold and absolute it felt like drowning. He just nodded. I turned and walked away. I couldn't look back. My car was down the street, loaded with the few boxes and bags that were now my entire world. I got in and shut the door. The sound echoed the closing of a chapter. No, the whole book. I gripped the steering wheel as the full weight of my new reality crashed down. I had no address, I had no home. The word homeless wasn't an abstract concept anymore. It was me. I just drove. I had no destination. I passed parks and schools, past houses with lights on, families inside having dinner. I was on the outside looking in, totally alienated from the world that just kept spinning. As night fell, I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket, finding a dark corner. I reclined the driver's seat. The angle was awkward, my neck cramped, and the seatbelt buckle dug into my hip. This was my bed. The shame I felt earlier had morphed into a profound, terrifying despair. Studies show that this feeling of hopelessness and lack of control is a common psychological toll of housing insecurity. I was invisible, a car in a parking lot, a non person. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the window, and for the first time in 24 hours, I cried. Gut wrenching sobs of pure loss. I had hit rock bottom, and I had never felt so alone. If you've ever felt like you've hit a wall, or if you believe in the power of real stories to create connection, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps create a space for these important conversations. Now, back to the story. I don't know how long I sat in that car, lost in a fog of despair. The sun came up painfully bright. People walked into the supermarket, living their normal lives. For me, there was no next. My phone was almost dead. I looked at my contact list, my sister, my parents, my brother. Calling them felt like the ultimate admission of failure. For years, I had built this image of the independent one. Calling them now would shatter it. The fear of their judgment, of their pity, of becoming a burden was a physical barrier. But what was the alternative? Another night in the car? A shelter? Facing potential separation from family is a gut wrenching decision many face, with the only other option often being the street. The thought of navigating a shelter system felt like a further stripping away of my identity. Just as I gave up, my finger pressed my sister's name. It started ringing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I almost hung up. One ring, two rings. How do I even start? I'm in a bit of trouble. Too casual. I need your help. Too direct. Hello? Her voice was cheerful, normal. It was from a world I no longer belonged to. Silence. I couldn't get the words out, choked by shame. Hello? Are you there? She asked, a hint of concern in her voice. And then it all came out. Not in a calm explanation, but in a broken, sobbing confession of everything. The notice, the packing, the car. I laid it all bare, expecting a lecture, and I told you so, or worse, that disappointed sigh I dreaded more than anything. What I got was silence, just for a second. And then her voice, soft and steady, cut through my tears. Where are you? It wasn't a question of blame. It wasn't, how could you let this happen? It was a question of logistics, a question of action. I'm in a parking lot, I managed to say. Okay, she said, her voice firm, resolute. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. We'll figure this out. And with those words, a tiny crack appeared in the wall of my despair. It was the most unexpected sound in the world. A lifeline. It wasn't a solution to everything, but it was the sound of not being alone anymore. The drive to my sister's house was quiet. She seemed to understand I didn't have the capacity for questions. She helped me carry my few boxes to her spare room. It's not much, she said, gesturing to the small, clean space, but it's safe. Safe? I hadn't felt safe in what felt like a lifetime. The first few days were awkward. I felt like an intruder, hiding in the spare room, endlessly scrolling through apartment listings online. The eviction on my record was a huge barrier, just as I'd feared, but my family wouldn't let me hide. My sister coaxed me out for dinner. My parents called not to pry, but just to talk. My brother stopped by with a pizza, and we sat on the floor and talked for hours. Really talked for the first time in years. Slowly, the focus shifted from my crisis to the quieter work of reconnection. We talked about the years of drift, the unspoken distance that had grown between us, the busyness, the assumptions. It turned out they weren't the judging figures I had built up in my head. They were just my family with their own struggles. My carefully curated independence had kept them at arm's length, too. They thought I didn't need them. My crisis, as awful as it was, had shattered the walls I'd built. This experience mirrors what research and intervention programs have discovered. Family intervention and reunification are powerful tools against homelessness. Restoring those social connections is crucial. Being with my family was more than a temporary fix. It was the kind of safety net that helps break the cycle of housing instability. It was a healing process, slow and sometimes painful, but real. The empty space in my life, once filled with furniture, was now being filled with conversations, shared meals, and laughter. I was rebuilding my foundation. It's been 6 months. I have a new job and I'm saving up, slowly but surely. I'm still in my sister's spare room, but the shame I once felt has been replaced by a quiet, profound gratitude. Losing my apartment felt like the end of the world. I thought my identity was tied up in those four walls, in my independence. I thought losing it meant I had lost everything, but I was wrong. What I lost was just a place. What I gained was my family, not the distant surface level family of holiday phone calls, but the real, messy, supportive family that had been there all along, waiting for me to let them in. The something they never saw coming wasn't some dramatic plot twist. It was quieter and far more powerful. It was rediscovering human connection. It was learning that home isn't a place you rent. Home is the people who show up when you have nothing. It's the people who ask, "Where are you?" and mean, "I am coming." It's feeling safe, not because of the lock on your door, but because of the people who hold you in their hearts. My world is no longer defined by square footage, but by the strength of my relationships. The trauma of that eviction will always be a scar, but it's also a reminder of what truly matters. I lost a house and I found my home. My journey taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what's truly important. The material things, the image you project, it can all disappear in an instant, but the love and support from the people who care about you, that is the real foundation. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear about your experience in the comments below. Let's create a community of support right here. And if you know someone who might be feeling lost, please share this video with them. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone is the first step toward finding your way back. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about resilience and the power of human connection.